I know this video is going to be extremely late, and that's on me, but I really wanted to make sure that everything I had to say about this project is being properly conveyed, because the pure joy I have in regards to this project is incomprehensible. This is how you give proper respect to one of the flagship hero franchises of all time. A franchise so great that other than like Spider-Man was a reason that Marvel Comics was able to make it past the 1990s. A franchise so revolutionary that its giant allegory for social justice has brought light to many people's blinding ignorance. And a franchise so inspiring that it got little old me into comic books, and I haven't looked back since. So it brings me great pleasure for me to say X-Men 97 is really good. It's the perfect love letter to fans of their original 90s series and comic fans in general, while bringing such an emphatic return of the X-Men to the general public, which was highly needed after the relatively underwhelming fizzling out of the original Fox run. What If Season 1 laid the template, showing that there was a market out there for animated Disney Plus original series, and Marvel immediately jumped on the idea of kickstarting back one of their biggest IPs ever. And what would seemingly be insignificant news for most Marvel fans who were just looking for dates for when the new movies would come out the following year in 2022 would spiral into arguably one of the greatest projects in MCU history. But this isn't going to be a video of me just going on a tangent and straight up glazing the story, because I feel like that has been done a million times before, especially with how late this video is going up. I actually wanted to touch on a point that very few have mentioned before, because frankly, many didn't see the original 90s series. And I'm not here to gatekeep or anything, heck, I wasn't even alive during the original run, but I just need you guys to understand how intricate, how purposeful, and really how perfect of a sequel this series actually is. Because the greatness that is X-Men 97 has a lot more to do with the original series than people truly understand. Making this a continuation instead of a reboot was a very calculated decision. And because they had such a particular mindset about things, they were successfully able to build off the legacy in an effective manner, which not only made for amazing representations of these iconic characters and stories, but allowed for it to do the impossible and become the looming Season 5 that the original series never truly got to have.
I keep my baseball cards in my
X-Men the Animated Series is easily one of the most recognizable looks for Marvel's favorite batch of mutants, and that's because the series is an animation revolutionary which garnered a level of appreciation that wasn't felt by many of its contemporaries, eventually becoming the major gateway that allowed for X-Men to reach outside their typical media realm of comics into live action and into more animation. Its more daring themes pushed the boundaries of storytelling and what was expected from a cartoon, with its diversity and different approaches to prejudice alone being way ahead of its time. Its cast would also go on to define characters for generations through iconic voice work, making it impossible to not hear Lenore's Rogue or Chris Potter's Gambit or Cal Dodd's Wolverine when picking up a comic. This is also all while being instrumental in fighting the good fight for civilization, as giving tight, consistent season-wide stories practically ignored every rule for cartoons at the time. Having a dumbed-down story with one villain that's wrapped up and defeated in 20-something minutes, that was the format. It was a formula made to maximize profit. It gave room for anyone to tune in whenever they wanted to, leading to potentially better receptions on reruns, gave more flexibility in case production gets delayed, it kept characters consistent, etc. But doing this for the X-Men meant giving up the project's integrity, and the creators were far from willing to do that. They wanted to make something ambitious that allowed them to fully flesh out these characters and have them spark intelligent conversations, something that specifically didn't talk down to their viewers, and more importantly, something that is extremely faithful to the original source material. That's why this show has become the gold standard as far as making animated comic adaptations. So despite initial concerns, the series was vibrant and fun while also being groundbreaking, eventually reaching its natural conclusion after a very successful 5-season run. However, it was also unfortunate that we didn't end off in a bang, more of a whimper, never fully canceling, but having every problem that ever played the show being in full effect here. The infamous Season 5 rolls around and budget cuts are widely apparent, which, as a modern viewer, is very apparent seeing already dicey animation take an even larger step back. Not to mention we're going a season farther than what was initially anticipated for the show, so continuity and planning in general just isn't the strongest. Don't get me wrong, it was far from the worst thing around, but every problem that was only hinted at during the other seasons are just now on full display. Sprinkle in some other major changes, and they had essentially molded the show into something almost unrecognizable. Whether Whether it was the awful animation, lackluster character or character depth, the separation from overarching themes, or just falling victim to episodic storytelling, it stings a little when looking back because while yes, we can acknowledge the success of the show, we can also play ourselves asking, what if? What if X-Men Season 5 was given the proper care and budget as the others? And I love that with X-Men 97, they took a look at that original and said, let's pick it up and make it better than it ever was before.
To me, my X-Men.
Looking through interviews in the show itself, it's clear that creatives wanted this project to be a return to form in a sense to that classic X-Men feel that has been altered and remixed over the years in public media. A good quote thrown out there is, making content that is as potent as what inspired them. Really just working within its core themes to create a stimulating message and aligning with the source material as best as they can. An approach that is relatively similar to the original, and that's because on a very surface level, the approach that X-Men 97 took wasn't anything particularly special, ultimately being a refinement of something great and pushing it to make it even greater, taking the parts that work and adding new elements to them while cutting out anything that detracts from it or feels dated, which is a huge thing with the original series because it was very 90s, but again, always keeping that original core feeling that just screams X-Men. Like embracing those feelings attached to older animation, but committing to making it look better than how the originals ever looked before through that fluid mix between 2D and 3D animation. A decision that really accents those nostalgic feelings of the show, yet allows for these character portrayals to be grander than they ever were before, portraying that true scope of these mutant abilities and giving them the flexibility to show far deeper into this fascinating world. X-Men 97 also makes that conscious decision to build the story off of these previously established dynamics of characters, and really makes it a point to reflect the story as a team endeavor, a fundamental mistake that many other forms of X-Men media and even the original series to a certain extent seem to consistently fall victim to, limiting that expansive world of mutants by specifically focusing on just Wolverine or Mystique, or only fleshing out the Charles and Magnus conflict. This bridging the gap moment between the original series and 97 goes further than just animation or character dynamics though, as it is most prominently reflected when it seeps into how these creators chose to approach the themes of the series. The emotional complexities of these characters and moral ambiguity of actions were some of the greatest parts of the original show, as that embrace of darker and daring concepts such as bigotry, tragedy, anxiety, and government corruption truly separated the show from others like it at the time. I mean, shoot, even now you'd be stumped to find any show that even attempts to tackle the intricacies of faith and religion as those Nightcrawler episodes do. You can't properly tell an X-Men story without putting a mirror and reflecting on the entire spectrum of the human mind. And X-Men 97 really engulfs itself into different social commentaries at the highest degree. Reveling in the convolution of man and our sometimes illogical ways of thinking, we actually reach more profound heights of thought in X-Men 97 as the dialogue isn't as filtered as in the original series. We aren't making things overly melodramatic to show that we are covering a serious topic. We've refined it, and now we have a Magneto with maxed out speech points like how it should be. You can't bring up 97 championing the prominence of the past and returning back to the roots of X-Men without mentioning the voice work. You see a big reason as to why the original X-Men series is so acclaimed as one of the most iconic batches of voice boils down to the more unconventional approach for finding talent, especially for the time. Creatives put a heavy emphasis on looking for drama-inducing voices that spoke to the heart of the characters instead of looking for generic action voices or purely popular names, a tactic that could be beneficial for modern animation. This approach led to searching for actors even outside of the traditional voice acting scene, most notably in places such as theater, traditional film and TV, and even TV commercial voices. This culminated in a cast that, despite having a majority not even specializing in voice acting, would consistently go out and give revolutionary performances. Performances that literally set the standard that every other iteration of this team tries to mimic. So it was a no-brainer for 97 to actively try to retain this greatness and hone it through more implicit dialogue to reach unparalleled levels of quality. Many of these classics were brought back, some going on to reprise their roles and others spreading their notable voices to other characters. And with the new Hall of Voices, they not only brought modern voice acting powerhouses such as Ray Chase and Ross Marquand, but made sure to still emphasize that standard that was set 30 years ago.
You cannot oppose me.
Jubilation is the best word I can describe seeing the staple Marvel team finally make its return to dominate on the big screen. Heck, I'm in such an X-Men mood, you may catch me making another video after I get finished talking about Inside Out 2, which is a little spoiler for y'all. X-Men 97 was just so extremely well executed, and I feel like in a media age dominated by the likes of remakes and sequels, it has just become the blueprint project to show that creativity truly knows no bounds. And that what's so special about these sequel projects doesn't end at simply attaching a popular name, but taking the substance of something great and using modern techniques to make it flawless.